When I was 10 years old, I got to spend the summer with my grandparents. They lived on this farm in Baird, Nebraska. It is about 30 miles from my hometown of Gearing, Nebraska, but to me it was a world away. And it was a world away for a couple of reasons. The main reason is I got away from my 3 sisters. I was the oldest. I did not want the responsibility for the summer. And the second reason, I got to spend the one-on-one time with my grandparents. They lived on a farm, but they did not farm the land any longer. My grandfather's job was to monitor water for the farmers from the irrigation ditch. And so Nebraska was part of the Great American Desert way back when. And it's no longer part of the Great American Desert, but it's still really dry there. So farmers need to irrigate their crops in order for them to grow. That was his job. So my grandfather, who I affectionately called Gramps, so Gramps and I loaded in his truck every morning and we rode the ditch. What riding the ditch means is the irrigation ditch meandered through farmland because it needed to be in places where the farmers could irrigate their crops. And there is a dirt road that followed the irrigation ditch. So we rode the ditch. Now, when you're out and about for long periods of time, you have the opportunity to go pee outside. Now, as I said, I grew up in town. That didn't happen, but out in the country, there was a lot of opportunity to do that. And I consider this my summer of freedom because I was away from my sisters. And so I would go out behind the truck, and I thought that was very cool. So my grandfather and I, we rode the ditch, and you see here is one of the gates that regulated the water. So we would stop by every gate and make sure that they weren't clogged and that the amount of water the farmer had purchased was correct, and then I would log it in a ledger. I loved my summer with my grandparents. It's very beloved to me, and I have fond memories. Unfortunately, 10-year-olds turn into teenagers. And I quickly became a sullen teen who was too cool for my hometown of Gearing, Nebraska. And I was too cosmopolitan, I had bigger ambitions than that town, and I wanted to leave. I wanted to be away from that. I had much better things to do. The thing about living in a small town is the job opportunities are about the size of the town. Small town, not many opportunities. Another item about small towns is that teen pregnancy rate is twice as high as it is in an urban area. And I fell into that statistic. I was married, had my daughter Jennifer, and divorced by the time I was 20. So I was really setting myself up to be destined to live in this small town that I so wanted to get away from, that felt like an anchor around my neck. As fate would have it, my parents got transferred to Kansas City. And I could not get out of there fast enough, and I had this big distance between me and my hometown. Like I couldn't wait to get away. I didn't want anybody to know I lived there. And the funny thing that I grabbed onto, it's really fun, the funny thing I grabbed onto that was really the symbol of my small town, country music. So I did not listen to country music. I just thought it was too much of a symbol of my hometown, and I don't care for it today, which is really funny, but it's the truth. But a funny thing happens along the way. Time and distance, and you start thinking about all of the things that happened when you were younger. And I began to think fondly of my hometown, specifically my town of Gearing, Nebraska. We had a bad breakup, Gearing and I. It was because of me that we had the breakup, so I was really hoping that it would have me back. And as luck would have it, Gearing has a very kind heart. Hundreds of people break up with Gearing and leave and never want to come back. But Gearing always has his arms open, and it said, "Maureen, I miss you and I love you." So now when I go back, I make sure I hit all the spots. I go look at the houses that we lived in. I go to my grandparents' farm and then another grandparent's hometown. And then I always make sure I see the highlights because my little town is quite beautiful. And I didn't appreciate it when I lived there. But I also make sure I hit all the great spots to eat. I gotta make sure I do that. But there's one thing I don't do, and I no longer go pee outside. So my time there is beloved, and I'm so glad that Gearing allowed me to reconnect with it. And I now fondly look upon my summer freedom fondly again with my grandparents. And I don't have a desire to live in a small town, but I appreciate how it formed me. And I am so very thankful for Gearing, Nebraska, and the person it made me today. Thank you.
That was a wonderful speech.